London, 1847. A man is lying on a wooden table, cold sweat pouring down his face, shaking, with a leg that has rotted down to the bone. And the only thing standing between him and death is a 6'4" giant with a sharpened blade and absolutely no chill. That giant's name is Robert Liston, and he's about to save your life in 28 seconds, if he doesn't kill you in the process. But first, you need to understand what medicine looked like in 1847, because it wasn't really medicine. It was more of a collective experiment on human beings, with very loosely defined consent. General anesthesia didn't exist. If you needed surgery, your options were a swig of cheap whiskey, biting down on a leather strap, and praying to whatever saint had the patience to deal with you that day. That was the pre-op. That was the official medical protocol. And hygiene? Oh boy. Hygiene was still very much a work in progress. Surgeons didn't wash their hands, didn't clean their instruments. They'd walk straight from the autopsy room into the operating theater. Same apron, the one they'd been wearing for weeks, with the battle scars of every poor soul who had been on that table before you. A Victorian hospital was basically a slaughterhouse with a waiting list and a live studio audience. That's right, an audience. Surgeries were open to the public. Medical students, visiting doctors, curious civilians. Anyone could buy a ticket and watch. People showed up early to grab good seats. There was a buzz in the air, murmurs of anticipation. It was the Netflix of the era, except with considerably more blood and considerably less choice for whoever was strapped to the table. And in this whole circus, Robert Liston was the headline act. 6'4", hands the size of shovels, the kind of presence that silenced an entire room the moment he walked in. And one very specific gift: he could amputate a human leg in under 30 seconds. The crowd timed him with pocket watches, like it was the Olympics, like limb amputation was a competitive sport with a world record on the line. And Liston loved it. He'd stride into the operating theater, scan the crowd, raise his blade and say, "Time me, gentlemen," and the show would begin. Because speed back then was mercy. Every second less on that table was one less second of conscious agony. Liston wasn't a sadist. He was the best medicine had to offer, the most humane option in the room. Until that one particular day, when he took it way too far. The patient's name was Frederick Churchill, 42 years old. A massive abscess on his thigh that had become infected kept growing and reached a point of no return. The leg had to go, or he'd die of gangrene within 2 weeks. Churchill was brought into the theater, laid on the table, 3 assistants holding him down, shoulders, thighs, ankles, because grown men, it turns out, tend to react rather dramatically when someone is about to saw their leg off without anesthesia. Shocking, really. The crowd settled in. Pocket watches were drawn. Liston entered. "Time me, gentlemen." He positioned himself, took a breath, raised the blade, and went. Cut through the flesh, deep, clean, zero hesitation. Liston worked like a machine, fluid, precise, relentless, down to the bone in seconds. The saw came out. The patient screamed. The assistants held on for dear life. The crowd held its breath. And that's when it happened. In one movement that was just a fraction too fast, Liston's blade veered slightly off angle and took off 2 of his assistants' fingers. 2 fingers right there on the table next to the amputated leg. The assistant screamed. The room erupted. Liston did not stop. Robert Liston never stopped. He finished the amputation, packed the wound, sutured it shut. 26 seconds, personal best. Churchill was alive. The assistant was staring at his hand in absolute disbelief, and then someone in the crowd noticed that an elderly gentleman in the front row had gone down, collapsed, on the floor, not moving. They rushed over. He was dead. The story that circulated for decades goes like this. Liston's blade, in one of its sharp, sweeping movements, had grazed the man's coat. The man looked down, felt the fabric tear, assumed he'd been cut open, and his heart just gave out on the spot. Died of fright. So, let's do the math. One patient operated on, one assistant missing 2 fingers, one spectator dead from a heart attack, one surgery, 3 casualties, 300% mortality rate. The only successful operation in medical history that managed to kill more people than were actually on the table.
And Churchill, did he make it? He survived the surgery, yes. 2 days later, severe infection in the amputation stump. Why? Because the instruments weren't sterilized. Because nobody quite understood what bacteria were yet. Because Liston's apron was essentially a historical document of the past 3 weeks of surgeries, and nobody thought that was a problem. Churchill died on the 3rd day. The assistant who lost the fingers also developed an infection, also died. Final score, 0 survivors, 300% mortality rate confirmed. Robert Liston died that same year, 1847, 53 years old. He never lived to see the world that came after him. The world with real anesthesia, with surgical gloves, with antibiotics, with the radical and groundbreaking concept of washing your hands before cutting someone open. He wasn't a monster. He was the best of his era. And his era was just like that. The moral of the story is simple and deeply uncomfortable. Everyone sitting in that operating theater believed they were watching the cutting edge of modern medicine, the absolute pinnacle of what human science had to offer. They were wrong about almost everything. And the question that won't leave your head is this: 200 years from now, what will people say about the medicine we practice today? About the treatments we call revolutionary? About the procedures that seem completely reasonable right now? They'll probably look back with that same gut-punch mix of horror and disbelief that we feel right now. And they'll be very, very glad they weren't born in our time. If you made it this far without closing the tab, the next episode was made for you. We're talking about the doctor who decided that the cure for mental illness was pulling out all of his patients' teeth. Every single one. All at once. The logic was airtight, the results were catastrophic. See you there.